So pay attention to your numbers here. Cross section here is only on scan now. So if you pick somebody else up on radar, some other ship, and you can see the little outline on it, that is because you're seeing this electromagnetic, unless you're scanning. Scanning will pick up the cross section. So when you're using cross-section missiles, you have to scan in order to get cross-section missiles to actually lock. But anyway, we want to get this number down, but we want to maintain power, right? So first thing we do is we go to stealth coolers, because 2 stealth coolers will very easily keep the temperatures down. Shields, you can kind of do whatever you want with. If you have the power, you can run military shields. If you don't have the power, you can run civilians and you don't lose much health. So, for example, with the military C stock shields at full power, you get 9,500 health on the shields. And the last shield, even though it is not active, counts towards this bubble. Oh, my fat head's in the way. Sorry. Let me turn my camera off for a minute so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so over here you have 9,500 in total shield health. If you take the inactive shield off, you drop to 6k. So this shield, even though it's not active, it does provide shield for the bubble. So for shields, if you go all military, you're going to have a little bit more health in the pool, but we also want to look at the charge time and the emissions, right? So we're pretty good being at 9.6 because we want it to be around the cross section. But if we drop these down to like civilian A's, you lose 500 shield, but now it's a second faster on the regens, and it uses a little bit less power. So now you can fully power your entire ship with the military grade A radar. Now there's some ships that don't have enough power to do everything, and radar being as important as it is, you can get by with the competition B radar because it only takes 2 or 3 pips. So I put competition Bs on majority of my things. Yes, all the radars are from New Butthole, Omega Pro and New Butthole. You can buy every single one of them there. The percentage numbers at the bottom here is how sensitive the radars are to these numbers up here. So a size 1 radar is 80% effective at picking up IR, EM, and CS, and 100% effective at resources. Now you go to something like the Industrial D, it's still got the 80%, but now it's only 60% effective on resources, which doesn't make any sense, but just something to be aware of. So your Military A gives you 1300 range for 5 power. Competition B gives you 1100 range for 2 power. So just something to keep in mind. Radars, if you can't power a Military A, get a Competition B. And you will have a much better time keeping your pips as far out as you can. And this applies to all sizes of radar. Size 2s and 3s. So this is running a military grade A and deadbolts. So if you're running lasers or any sort of energy weapons here, you would have to readjust this a little bit. Because you have so much power here, it's going to lessen the health of the ship, but remember you still only have the 6k total. So if you can get a stealth B or a stealth A grade, that'll lower your or your electromagnetic a lot. So going from 16k electromagnetic on a military power, going to a stealth B, you drop to 9k. So you're almost at your cross-section level, which is what we want. So think of these numbers up here as how much signal your ship is emitting. So if you Your infrared is based on things that generate heat. So like coolers, if we deactivate a cooler, your heat generation drops. Because the coolers put off heat as they cool your ship. Now obviously we can't do this because you'll overheat. But it was an example. And then your electromagnetic is anything that generates power or uses power. So going from a stealth grade to a military grade A, this is going to jump because this puts out a lot more power. So if we run a stealth here, we drop back down to 9.6 because the stealth ones generate less power and they're designed to not put off as much emissions. Now if we change any of your guns to say an electric weapon like the M6, that ups your electromagnetic signature again because you have something else using power. Yes. So the reasoning behind, let me put that back. So the reasoning behind the stealth coolers, if we leave all this stuff alone, we have the stealth power, and we put in like a military grade A set of coolers. They keep your ship cooler, but to do that, they have to put that heat outside the ship, which increases your IR. And they use power, so it also increases your electromagnetic a little bit. So now we could deactivate one and still run on a single cooler, but this number is still a lot higher than we want it to be. Because the lower these signature numbers, the harder it's going to be for rockets or missiles to stay attached to you, especially when you're flaring. Because flares have this same number. Not the same number, but they do have the same elements. So if your ship is bigger and brighter than a flare, then the missiles are going to stay locked on you. And then for quantum drive, when we're looking at these numbers, if you want maximum distance, you're going to go with like the Vulcan, the Industrial D, at 162. But you lose a lot of speed and it's got a 23-second cooldown. Whereas if we go with like a beacon, which we can't get, a lot of these military ones are decent, but you can't get them unless you know where to look. So it's between the Vulcan, the Goliath, and the Colossus. And in my opinion, I would probably run a Goliath because it gives you the mid-range between distance and speed. Unless you can get a hold of like the Siren or the VK, obviously, because they have less cooldown and they maintain the distance and speed. But it depends. If you want a little bit more speed, you go Colossus. If you want a little bit more distance, you go Vulcan, but Goliath is right in the middle. Over here, on the right side under the picture, you can share the link, which gives you something like that, so you can pull up exactly how we have this. And then there's this nifty little button right here that says non-stock items to cart. If you click that, it'll add them to cart, and then up here at the top, you click the cart and it'll give you every single item that does not come stock on the ship. And then you can click these little drop downs and you can pick locations. So you can go through and you can pick each location that you want to shop at, and ideally narrow your trips down to like 2 places. And then as you go through and you buy stuff, you just delete it from the right side here so you can keep track of what you need. Pretty nifty little tool. The top number here, and this is the same on all the MFDs, the top number is what your ship is currently emitting, and the bottom number is the location and space that you're in, like your environmental, what do they fucking call that? The surrounding interference, I guess. So right now I'm putting out 2 infrareds, 5.8K electromagnetic and 5.9K cross-section. This is pretty fucking ideal for a stealth ship. Now this cross-section can get lower with stealth ships, but trying to get the electromagnetic down to that number is much more difficult because you have to cut components. So like if I lower my engines, my electromagnetic will come down. So if you get rid of non-essential things, like you cut your life support, you cut your shields, you're going to drop this EM number substantially. So if you're ever trying to be sneaky, keep in mind you can do this. Weapons aren't really going to matter a whole lot because I have ballistics, and ballistics don't generate heat. Now if I cut radar, it'll drop down into the sub-thousands for infrared, and it'll drop quite a bit on the EM. Well, they don't generate heat in the same way that electronic weapons do. So the difference now is your radar is dependent on how far out you get pips, right? So if you're at maximum radar, on a size 1 radar, you'll get pips out to 1300. But if you cut radar down here, your pips are going to drop to like 500, but you're still going to be able to detect things at the same range. So if you're trying to sneak up on somebody, you can drop your radar and bring your IREM down quite a bit. So the bit about these bottom bits here, if the bottom number is bigger than the top number, then your environmental noise is bigger than your ship. So if I have a 2K infrared, but I'm in a zone that has 3K emissions, I am invisible. So just something to keep in mind if you position yourself well in like an asteroid field or a dust cloud or any sort of interference, and you can get the bottom number bigger than the top number, then it doesn't matter how much radar or how close people are to you, they will not see you. So see this little bubble here? There's a bunch of sparkling dust in the air. This is an interference field, or an interference cloud, or whatever you want to call it. So see, now my bottom numbers are 50K. So this particular bubble that I'm in has 50K worth of resistance, and all of my numbers are underneath that. And when that happens, this will turn green, depending on the ship, to let you know that you're hidden. So right now, even though I'm just kind of sitting here in the open, nobody can see me. Like radar will not be able to pick me up at all. Normally your ship is like this, where your guns are locked. So if I go from the front angle here, you'll see as I move, my guns are locked to the ship. If you hit G, it unlocks your guns. So now, my guns move with my mouse instead of with the ship, which gives you a little bit more accuracy if you're on mouse. If you're on joystick, it doesn't work that way. But that's our little help for mouse, and you can tell it's unlocked because see, the cursor stays locked in the middle, but if you hit G, it unlocks the cursor. And those little white dots you see is where the guns are aiming. So it does have a little delay, but it's usually pretty accurate. And it just shows like the limits of the guns, so if you go too far side to side or whatever, it limits them. And another thing is you're coupled. So I have the advanced HUD on in the menu. Under somewhere in here, defaults advanced HUD and SCM I have turned on, which is all this extra shit on my screen. This is your stuff that's turned on. So like if I turn on my flashlight or my ship light, it's supposed to show up there, but it's fucking not. But coupled here means that my ship will fly like an airplane. There's also a coupled right here. So when coupled is on, if I fly forward and then let go, it's going to slow me down. And if I turn, it's going to keep me in the same path, right? If I disable the coupled with C, Charlie on the keyboard, C, will disable coupled. If I fly forward and let go, I will continue flying like a spaceship. And I can turn around, and I'm still going in the same direction. I can flip any which direction I want to, and I will maintain the momentum that I'm going. So this comes in handy when you're in space and you're doing space fights, because you can, like if you're picking a bigger target to pick on, look, there's another one of those interference clouds there. So you hide in that and people won't see you. But anyway, the good thing about the coupled is I can fly at a bigger ship like this, and just with tapping W, just tap it here and there, and I can maintain an orbit around a bigger ship and keep my nose on target while I drift around in a circle, which keeps their guns off me, but my guns on them. You can do this with a coupled turned on, because you don't drift. And you can do all sorts of course correcting and changing positions, and you can change, if you add in like space to go up, you can kind of change your course a little bit. So it just depends on the situation and what you got to do. The other fun fact is boosting does not only apply to your forward thrusting. Yeah, there is a lot of detail. So your ship has very strong thrusters in certain spots, right? So the rear thrusters here are obviously going to be the strongest. And then your bottom vectoring thrusters are the strongest. Right? You have more bottoming thrusters than you do on the top. So your top ones and your side ones are the weakest. But the bottom ones are the strongest. And that one's broken apparently. So what that means is when you are chasing a target, right, if I look down, I'm going to be slower than if I look up. And it's not a lot, and every ship is a little bit different, but for the most part, looking up is faster than looking down. And both of those are faster than looking side to side. So when you chase a target, you want the target to be going up. Right? So when you're coming up on something, if the target is moving past you on the side, you rotate so you can chase up. And you will be able to keep your nose on target much faster than if you're trying to chase down or to the side. So for example, we'll plow past this meteor. If I try to look down, I can kind of keep it in sight. But if I try to look to the side, it's much slower to try and keep past it or keep on target, right? I'm not going to be able to chase it. So now you add in your directional and you can apply boost, right? So boost can be applied at any time and it goes to whatever thrusters are being used. So if I fly straight up and I apply boost, I will go faster up. If I'm flying forward and I apply boost, I'll go faster forward, and you already know that one. But if you are in a drift, like if I am uncoupled, we're going to come to a stop for the example. But if I'm drifting and I look up, right, this is my maximum up speed. If I apply boost, I can spin a whole lot faster. Right? So, if you're in a combat situation and your target, let's say this rock here, flies past you, you can boost and spin around on target faster. This little doodad is important to keep track of because that's the direction you're moving. So I can rotate any which way. This is always going to stay where it's at because that's the direction I'm moving. This is also handy, when you're trying to avoid getting shot. So there's a nifty little trick called tri-vectoring. So we pick an object or a direction, doesn't even have to be an object. Getting late? Alright, Meter Monkey. Have a wonderful night, good sir. So what we want to do is we want this vectoring indicator to stay within our crosshair like this. Right? But we don't want to move the ship like this. We want the vectoring crosshair to move around our crosshair. So if you hold W to get your movement going forward, and then you apply a roll in one direction and a strife in an opposite direction, so either E and A or Q and D, you can get a spiral going, and then you add space into that. So forward and space, and then A and D, E or Q, and you can get a roll. And you want to keep your vectoring indicator about an inch from your crosshair. And then you can apply boost when necessary to speed it up a little bit more. And you always want to snap this so that your vectoring indicator stays about an inch from your crosshair. Okay, and what that does, let's see if I can do it from third person. It gives you a nice spiral, so when people are trying to shoot at you, they cannot, because your targeting pip will be doing goofy things and they won't be able to hit you. Alright. Let me switch camera angles here so you can kind of see what's happening, because the trail will be more interesting. So see, we're adding a bit of a spiral. So for people trying to shoot at you, you're going to be damn near impossible to hit because you're moving in a way that the pips can't chase you. And the way I've been doing the free look, if you tap Z, you can free look, and then you tap it again to relock. Or you can hold Z, and when you let go, it relocks. So you got a couple different options, and then F4 is your third-person camera zoom, or the movement is also Z. And then if you hold F4, you can scroll in and out. So you can get a better picture of your ship or what you're trying to do. Another one that I forgot to mention is X is your best friend. X is your space brake, and it will apply whatever force necessary and whatever direction required to bring you to a stop. So don't be afraid to hold X in those oh shit moments and hope you come to a stop fast enough. Let's go build an Aurora. Yo, what's up, Ambrock? How you doing, man? So, Mr. Soyuz, do you plan on using energy or ballistic weapons on your Aurora? I have no idea. Perfect. We'll figure it out together then. 13 and 10, we'll call it. So as long as we get those down, we're doing a good job. So we'll go down to stealth coolers immediately because that's important. We're already down to 8.8, which is a pretty good step in the right direction. This comes with badgers, which are not very good. They used to be good, but they're not anymore. So if you want ballistics, deadbolts have the highest pen, so they will do the most damage through the ship and hit components. The M4As are the laser cannons. They have the highest DPS and the highest pen of laser weapons. Muzzle velocity is also kind of important, but not so much anymore. Alpha damage, muzzle velocity, fire rate, all that stuff is listed in here. But the big ones are your DPS and your penetration. So if you want something that's going to do the most damage, deadbolts are going to be the way to go, but they are a ballistic cannon and they do run out of ammo. M4As are laser cannons, similar flavor, but they don't run out of ammo, they just run out of capacity, so they have to recharge. And then sawbucks. Sawbucks are the kind of the secondary go-to for PvP because they have the highest muzzle velocity. So the faster the bullet goes, the less you gotta lead. So as a new player, I would recommend sawbucks because it's going to be a lot easier to hit your targets. The other option is you can run the scorpions, the badgers. These are all going to do just fine against PvE, but they're going to be a little lackluster in PvP. And then there's distortions, which when a ship's shield comes down, because distortions cannot go through shields, when a shield comes down, you hit it with distortions and it will kill the power plant with distortion and turn them into a floating brick. I run the distortions on my Asgard so I can steal cargo and stuff, but that's just something to keep in mind for later. So if I was building it, I would run sawbucks because they are very good and they have a very large ammo capacity of 2600, so you don't have to resupply as much. When it comes to missiles, the infrareds are kind of dog shit. So these come with a lot of size 1s, which is good for going against other small ships. If you're fighting stuff that's bigger than you, you can change your missile racks to size 2s, but then you only get 1 missile per rack. So again, something to keep in mind. You don't have to worry about it too much yet. But if I were to set it up, I would do sparks, because I am a fan of cross-section missiles, but you can do whatever you want there. And then for shields and power supply and radar, what we have to look at is how much capacity do we have here. So right now everything is pretty much full except for the -2 on the radar. So I'm going to start off going with the military A for the range, but now we got to power that. And if we try to get this electromagnetic number down more, we could go to a stealth, which gets us down to 6.4, which is damn near invisible. We have plenty of overhead for cooling, but we don't have enough power. So our next step would be to look at, if we want to keep our stealth, our next option is to look at shields, right? So a good shield upgrade would be just going up to the A grade of the civilians. We maintain our low number here, but we're still a little bit lackluster on power. So if we were to try to run military shields, which would be the highest bubble, we are really going to be lacking in power. So then we would have to jump up to like military Bs are pretty easy to get a hold of, which gives us the power to run it all, but now we're at 12k. So theoretically, this number is still smaller than your cross-section, so if you wanted to run a more sturdy ship, this would be the way to do it, because you have enough power for everything. But if you're trying to go for a stealth build, this isn't going to be the best. And again, with the quantum drive, doesn't really matter. If you want distance, go Vulcan. If you want speed, go Colossus. If you want right in the middle, go with the Goliath. So it's really up to you what you want to do. This thing's got a decent fuel tank, so I would go Colossus because you have 125 GM range. So that'll maintain your speed pretty well for quantum travel. So what I'll do is I'll share this one. And then if we go for the stealth build, we can knock this down to the stealth B power. We can get a hold of any of these stealth shields are kind of the same. Veils are really easy to get a hold of. So we'll pick Veils. You don't really lose a whole lot of health. You lose a little bit, but watch what our number turns into, right? So we have plenty of overhead for cooling, so we can even deactivate a cooler. And we're still under the threshold, but we got this number down to 5.7. So if you were trying to be stealthy, this would be the way to do it. But it depends on how you want to do it. And the other option is, if you want to keep your high-grade shields, we'll go civilian because you can buy those. If you want to keep your high grades and your stealth, you can do this. But you can also save a little bit here, dropping down to like a civilian A radar. Yes, so the smaller your signature, the harder you're going to be to pick up from other players and PvE. So if you're doing PvE bounties, they're not going to see you as soon and start chasing you right away. So it's a lot easier to pull off single level ships to fight one at a time instead of getting stuck in a hairball. So this is also a really good option here. There is a little bit more you could do, like you could drop to the competition grade. That'll save you a lot of power on radar. You can knock off a cooler and you could have full power to everything here. It's just you're back up to 7.4. So there's no real wrong way to do it. It just depends on how you want to do it. So at full power on the competition grade, you're at 1169, and at full power on civilian, you're at 1173. There's almost no difference here, right? It's just the 0.3 you lose from your electromagnetic. Whereas if you go to military, we drop that. We're going to be overheated here, but that's at 7K. But we're struggling with power a little bit. If you pull your life support off, you can make it work. But again, you're only at 1300, so you're only gaining like 180 something range. So it really just depends on what you're after. The only thing really to keep in mind is your health of your power supply. So a stealth power supply has 190 health, and a, let's say, industrial A puts off a lot more emissions, but it's got 300 health. So it just depends. If you want something a little more stout, the Britain isn't a bad choice. Gives you plenty of power. The White Rose is 220. Gives you a decent amount of power without increasing your EM too much. So when it comes to it, industrial and military are going to be the highest for ratings and the highest for health and output. Stealth and civilian will be the lowest. Competition is low health, super high output, not really useful here. So if you wanted to stick with like civilian grade stuff that you can buy pretty easily, this wouldn't be a bad way to do it. And then remember, you can hitch your non-stock items to cart here. And then you hitch your cart up top and it gives you everything in the list that didn't come on the ship. And then you can sort through each place so that you can buy, like, you can pick all the same place, so you don't have to fly all around to 15 different places. And then you can kind of just alt tab to a list of stuff that you have here. And then as you buy stuff, you just delete whatever you buy so you can keep track. And if you need anything at all, just yell at me, man. I will gladly help you out. The size 2s are kind of hard to get a hold of, but you can. What is it? Prowlers. If you can get a salvage mission or a bounty for a prowler, the Eclipse, the Stealth A, comes stock on a prowler. Or if you can get a scraping or bounty mission that has a C1, the C1 comes with the military B, the Bolide. Something comes, the Vanguard Sentinels come stock with a Stealth Bs. So if you can get a Vanguard Sentinel, either in a bounty or a scraping mission, you can steal its power supply. But that's going to be the only place you can really get those unless you find them somewhere.